See, here is a word. See that word up there? That's the word days. That's the word days in German. How do I know that? Do I know German? I haven't got a clue. But a German told me that was the word days in German. I hope it's the word days in German. I don't know whether it's the word days in German. But my point is, that is meaningless to me because I don't know the German language. But if you know the German language, presumably that order of letters there is meaningful to you. Now, here's the interesting thing that we need to understand. The molecules in our ropes of DNA, the order is actually meaningless, except, you know what's exciting? In the biochemistry of our cell, there's actually a language system, a code system that reads the DNA to make it meaningful. And in doing so, it actually makes the code system that reads the DNA that makes the code system that reads the DNA that makes the code system. You get the idea? You can't have one without the other. See, life is like that at a macroscopic level. Sort of like, you know, when I was flying in an aeroplane, a 747 back from Australia, my wife said, "You know this plane's made of 6 million parts?" I said, "Oh, interesting." She said, "Yes, but not one part flies." Do you realize an aeroplane is a collection of non-flying parts? Think about that the next time you're flying. But when it's all together, it works. You know, life is like that. For instance, in Australia, we have mosquitoes. You have mosquitoes over here, don't you? Yes. I know, we live in Kentucky, we have lots of mosquitoes. But here's what I like to do to mosquito. We call them mozzies, by the way. But I want to ask you a question. Why did that mosquito die? So you squashed it. Yeah, but look, that's got all the RNA and DNA and everything's all there. That's the best primeval soup an evolutionist could ever ask for. You know why the mosquito died? Because I disorganized it. See, look, here's an experiment you can do at home. If you take a frog and you put it in a blender, okay? Now, you can say to someone, "Here I have a disorganized frog." And just leave it sit around and see if it organizes itself back again. Well, you know that's not going to happen, right? Actually, you know, there's a man called Dr. Michael Behe. He's not a biblical creationist like myself, but from Leahy University, and he wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box. You know what he said? When you get down to the biochemistry of a cell, do you realize in the biochemistry of a cell, you have all these machines. They're biochemical machines. In other words, just to sense light and turn it into electrical impulses isn't a simple little task. It takes all these different molecules, all the right place, right time, right concentration, all together, page after page of all these things all together, or it won't work. And you've got that biochemical machine and another one and another one and another one all communicating together like a big plant making motor cars with all these robots working together. And he said, life is built on machines. He said, you can't believe in chance random processes. But you see, there's even a more powerful argument than that, because Richard Dawkins would argue, oh, those machines just came about by chance. But those machines came from the blueprints on our DNA. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you believe in evolution, matter had to produce the information and code systems for life to start with, to build the machines. Now, there's a German scientist, Dr. Werner Gitt, that has done a lot of work on this. You see, if you believe in evolution, what he's saying is, hey, matter had to produce a code system and information, and over millions of years, millions of times, you had to get new bits of code and new information. Do you know the interesting thing? Scientists have never seen one example, even one, where matter gives rise to one piece of information. And if you believe in evolution, it happened to happen millions of times. For instance, in his book, In the Beginning Was Information, I think this is probably the most powerful book today that devastates evolution scientifically. I really do. Here's a couple of statements from Dr. Gitt. He says this: "There is no known natural law through which matter can give rise to information, neither is any physical process or material phenomenon known that can do this. Matter can never give rise to information on its own. We've never seen it happen." He goes on to say, "A code system is always the result of a mental process. It requires an intelligent origin or inventor. It should be emphasized that matter as such is unable to generate any code. We've never seen matter generate code. All experiences indicate a thinking being voluntarily exercising his own free will, cognition, creativity is required." In other words, what we see in science, what we see is this, is that code systems only come from intelligence, information only comes from information. As Dr. Gitt goes on to say, there is no known natural law of nature, no known process, no known sequence of events which can cause information to originate by itself in matter. By the way, if what Dr. Gitt is saying is true, right at the foundational level, evolution is impossible. Absolutely impossible, and there's no evidence for it. Now you might say, well, how would Richard Dawkins respond to something like that? Well, in a video called From a Frog to a Prince, which Answers in Genesis produces, we have a recording of Dr. Dawkins being asked a question. and I want you to listen to what he has to say.
Professor Dawkins, can you give an example of a genetic mutation or an evolutionary process which can be seen to increase the information in the genome?
Well, I just want you to see the evidence for evolution yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not making fun of Dr. Dawkins, but I tell you this, whenever professors are asked that question all around the world, give one example where you see new information added into the genome. They can talk about changes in animals all you like, but when you ask the basic question about how matter could produce information in the first place, there's no answer. Isn't it exciting being a Christian? It really is, isn't it? In other words, where did the information come from in our genes? It had to come from greater information. Where did that come from? It had to come from greater information again. Where did that come from? It had to come from greater information again. Where did the code system come from? All experiences tell us had to come from an intelligence. You know what the Bible says? In the beginning, God, in infinite intelligence, provided the information systems for life. I can't scientifically prove it to you, but guess what? An infinite God who's always been there makes sense of the evidence and fits with real science. You can't prove it ultimately, but you can defend it scientifically. But when you believe in the beginning, the cosmos, that's actually a blind faith. Christians don't have a blind faith. Christians have a faith that makes sense of the facts and is supported by real science. Isn't it exciting being a Christian? It really is. Well, you know what I'm telling you? Hey, do you realize what we just did? I said, let's take what the Bible says, in the beginning God, put on those glasses, let's look at the evidence and let's test it with science. Guess what? We're able to defend it. In the beginning, the cosmos, this belief system didn't work. Now, let me show you another example, a real exciting example, I believe. And it's this. When you start in the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, it says God created distinct kinds of animals and plants, each to reproduce after their own kind. In fact, you find that phrase occurs 10 times in Genesis chapter 1. Now, when I went to university, you know what my teachers told me, my professors? They said, the Bible's wrong because it says God made distinct kinds of animals and plants, but we know that animals change. Let me ask you a question. Do animals change? Well, they do. For instance, dogs change, don't they? What do dogs change into? Well, dogs change into dogs. That's right. What were they? Dogs. What will they be? Dogs. What are they? Dogs. Is that evolution? Actually, that's dogs. That's all it is. I'm sure you've seen, we have wolves, coyotes, dingoes, collie, and so on, all the way down to almost not a dog, and that is a poodle. See, a poodle is really the end of the line in regard to dogs, but we'll talk about that a little while. Now, see, this is important because I was just over in the British Natural History Museum in London, and I walked into the Origin of Species exhibit, and you walk past the bust of Darwin, and the first sign you see is this. Before Charles Darwin, most people believed that God created all living things in exactly the form we see them today. This is the basis of the doctrine of creation. By the way, is that true? No, but you know what? That's what our public school students are often taught. They're taught creationists deny real science because they say God made the animals and plants like we see them today, and then they're gone on to be shown that animals change, and they say, the Bible's wrong. This is how they dupe our students in our education system. Because, see, I don't believe that statement. I mean, God didn't make poodles. Poodles are a